Hi, it's Jack, and this is the podcast version of this episode. If you want to read the words as they're being analysed, then if you're on Spotify, you can become a subscriber of this channel or head over to the YouTube channel. And on both platforms, you can also sign up to get exclusive episodes and early access to the regular weekly episodes too. I've got a message here. Jack, I recommend looking at Robert Baker's testimony in the Monica Sementilli trial. Baker offed Monica's husband, and she is on trial for participating in the event. Baker says Monica had nothing to do with it, and it was all him, with no influence or planning by Monica. His testimony is quite the wordplay. Would love your take. How can I refuse? Let's look and see if Monica was in on the murder of her husband or if Robert did it all on his own. There really are only two questions to ask.
Did she have anything to do with the planning or the execution of the plan to kill Fabio Sementilli?
No.
You're sure?
I'm positive.
Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Looking at what is said using my process of statement investigation, which anyone can learn to give themselves an advantage in understanding the people all around them from what they say. Because what I do here is strip away everything apart from the words that are said, because it's those words that will give us the key to seeing deception, seeing the truth, and also seeing the motivations of a person. So let's introduce the cast of characters in this episode. We have Fabio and Monica Sementilli, husband and wife. In 2017, Fabio was murdered in LA, and the person that did that was a guy called Robert Baker. Robert happened to be having an affair with Monica at the time. He confessed to the murder. However, Monica, at the time of recording, is on trial for the murder of her husband Fabio and the conspiracy to murder Fabio as well, which she denies. And we're going to look at the guy, Robert, giving his testimony about what happened. And he's going to claim that there was no involvement at all from Monica, but are his words reliable? Well, this is going to be tough because he's not exactly the most cooperative witness. Have a listen to this.
That a package was going to be delivered to her on a league night, correct?
I wrote that.
And that you plan to have it dropped off at the gym, correct?
That's what I wrote.
And then you wrote how it was difficult to accomplish this, right?
That's what I wrote.
So you were forced to wait for another time, right?
That's what I wrote.
Wow, I mean, you can see he's not really giving any answers for us to work with there, because I like to look at the words, and all I heard there was, that's what I wrote. In fact, what I'm going to have to do here, instead of digging into the words, is a bit of pattern recognition, first of all, because he's really closed down. He sticks to very short answers, yeses and nos, and doesn't say very much or repeats, that's what I wrote, rather than saying what actually happened. He talks about what he wrote. So I'm going to look for pattern recognition, and I'm going to see where he strays from that very locked down format. And when he does, there must be a reason for that. Look, lying and hiding things, it's very, very hard when you're in court and you're talking and something gets you and you want to explain it, but you still want to stay locked down, but it's hard to always be locked down, and he doesn't stay locked down. However, he does do a pretty damn good job. Let's look at the clip that I started this episode with, where he's asked the big questions outright.
Did she have anything to do with the planning or the execution of the plan to kill Fabio Sementilli?
No.
You're sure?
I'm positive.
Right there, we have some very short answers, but they would give indicators of the truth. If this was all I was looking at, I'd have to say this guy appears to be telling the truth. The question is, did she have anything to do with the planning or the execution of the plan to kill Fabio Sementilli? And he answers one word, no. The question is, did she? It's a did she question. And the only possible answers to that are legit, if you like, are yes, no, or don't know. And he comes straight out with a no. He's then asked, are you sure? And he says, I'm positive. Now, he doesn't say yes there, so there's a little chink for me to work with there. He doesn't say yes, I'm sure. In fact, he changes it to something which is, I'm positive. A little bit of a chink there in I'm positive. If you think about when you say I'm positive, are you always 100% certain when you say that? For example, did you lock the back door? Yeah, I'm positive I locked the back door. We'd say yes if we're 100% sure. We just tend to give that really certain yes. I'm positive bit more leeway for interpretation there. I'm positive means I'm pretty sure or I think around the concept. So he doesn't just say yes. So a little bit of straying there. Now, that was the two biggest questions. I do have to say, I can't say just on that I'm positive. Yeah, he's lying. I've got him. And on the no to the question, did she have anything to do with it? I'd say, yeah, I believe that would be come across as truthful. Let's look at that exchange, but let's look at it a little bit longer.
Let me just ask you, a few basic questions before we get into the details. Did you plan and execute the plan to murder Fabio Sementilli?
Yes,
And did you, in fact, do so?
I did.
And who was with you at that time?
Just Chris was. He was a lookout.
All right, we'll get to that. You see the defendant seated over here, Monica Sementilli?
Yes.
You knew her well at the time of the murder, is that right?
Yes.
Is it fair to say you were in a romantic or sexual relationship with her?
Yes. You can say that.
Was that true?
Yes.
Did she have anything to do with the planning or the execution of the plan to kill Fabio Sementilli?
No.
You're sure?
I'm positive.
Now, you have heard some of the evidence already against you in the form of what we call overhears, is that correct?
Yes.
Does that change your testimony that she had nothing to do with the planning or killing of Fabio Sementilli?
No, it doesn't change anything.
Does that remain your testimony under oath today?
Yeah, it is.
Right. The overhears that they spoke about, by the way, we will hear later on in this episode because they reveal quite a lot. Now, I talked about patterns. There was a real pattern there, which is yes and no, very short answers to the questions that are asked, apart from a couple of longer answers, and those are the ones that I'm going to dig into. So, did you plan and execute the plan to murder Fabio Sementilli? He says yes. It's a did you question. Yes, no, don't know would be the answers that we'd expect for that. And we get yes. So coming across as believable in his answer to that question. And did you in fact do so? He says, I did. Now, he doesn't say yes, but it's very, very short again. So he is staying locked down. He's on his pattern of short answers, just confirming or denying what is there. He's then asked, and who was with you at the time? So this is not a yes-no question. This is a question that needs a little bit more information. However, look at how he gives that little bit more information. And who was with you at the time? He says, just Chris. What? He was a lookout. So he's gone extra here with the answer. He hasn't just said Chris or Chris Austin to give the guy his full name. He starts with That suggests that unlike the other ones where he's giving just an automatic yes or no answer and he knows the answer that he wants to give, and I think in his mindset here he wants to say that he did it all on his own, Monica was not involved, which could be the truth, and he might just be like, this is the answer set that I'm going to give, I'm not going to give any more. He gives a much longer answer here, and it starts with and that is giving him some thinking time there. He doesn't have an automatic yes-no answer to come at it. He's thinking, what do I need to say here? What is it I need to say, and construct the answer? That's not necessarily that a lie is coming. It just says that here he's thinking carefully about his words. And then he says, just Chris. So we've got that word just here where he's using just as a focuser to just shine a light on this one thing that is going on, just this Chris. He doesn't want the possibility of anyone else being there. You know, the possible answer to that is Chris was with me, but he wants to say just Chris was with me. Why does he want to just say Chris was with me and no one else? Was there someone else there? Is he just wanting to have all the attention on Chris only? Just Chris. Whenever I hear just, I dig in and try and find deception. Just Chris. What? He was my... So he's got very stuttery. He says, what? He was a lookout. Now here he's gone extra because he wasn't asked who was with you and what were they doing. He said, he's telling us who was with him, Chris, and what he was doing. He was a lookout. So why has he gone extra there and given us a lot more information in what is happening? Why does he tell us that Chris is a lookout? Was there someone else that actually was a lookout and this is a lie? So he's trying to put all the lookout blame on Chris. I got from that answer, very possibly, that Robert was not alone or did not just have one person with him, because he wants us to really know there was only one person there. He wants us to be convinced, just Chris. And Chris was there as a lookout. Was there another person there? Was that person actually the lookout? The next question is, all right, we'll get to that. You see the defendant seated over there, Monica Sementilli, and he says yes, and we're back into this pattern of automatic answers. Very easy questions for him to answer. You knew her well at the time of the murder, is that right? The answer is one word again, yes. Again, believable, and it's the facts as we know them. Is it fair to say you were in a romantic or sexual relationship with her? He says yes. And then he says you can say that. So he's qualifying that answer a little bit. Like, what is going on there? I don't know. My guess might be that he might not have been into the relationship quite as much as Monica was. However, he does start with a yes. He says, he's asked, was that true? And he says yes. He's then asked, did she have anything to do with the planning or the execution of the plan to kill Fabio Sementilli? And he says no. So he's still on this format of very short answers, yes and no's. And like I said before, when we looked at this, that would suggest an indicator of truthfulness there with that no. You're sure? And then we've got this one that I dug up to be, is it 100% legit, this answer? I'm positive. He doesn't say, yes, I'm sure. He says, I'm positive. And I said, there might be something in that. Well, look, now I've seen that question where he deviates around who was with him. I'm thinking, is there a little bit more going on here? Because I've got more data points now of deception coming up in the words of Robert Baker. He's then asked, now, you've heard some of the evidence already against you in the form of what we call overhears. Is that correct? He says, yes. Really easy question, really, really short answer. Easy questions for this guy, short answers. He's not here to explain anything. He's not here to help anyone get any information. However, it is starting to leak out from him. Does that change your testimony that she had nothing to do with the planning or killing of Fabio Sementilli? And he says, no, it doesn't change anything. Now, no is, again, does that change? Yes, no, don't know would be proper answers for that, expected answers for that. And he does say no, but he doesn't say no that Monica wasn't involved. He just says his testimony hasn't changed. Does that change your testimony? No. And then he says it doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't change my story, or it doesn't change my testimony. He's gone really large and wide with that. It doesn't change anything. I.e., I'm again starting to think, has he just come in here with a game plan, which is what he wants to say and how he wants to say it, and what he's saying there is, I've heard all sorts of other things, but I'm sticking to my game plan. It doesn't change anything. He's asked, does that remain your testimony under oath today? And he interrupts here, which means he's got his answer ready now. I think he has got his answers ready. He's got a really simple plan in his head of, yes, I did it. I was involved in the murder. No, Monica was not involved in the murder. So when someone interrupts a question, it means they already know the answer and they can't wait to get the answer out. And he says, yes, it is. Again, he's still talking about the testimony. So there's the first part that we've looked at. What have I got so far? He's in a pattern which is really hard for me to get into because he's using few words. But when he goes that little bit extra, when he gives longer answers, I'm like, was he alone that night, or was it just him and Chris that night, or was someone else there? Not necessarily Monica, but was someone else there? And then that, I'm positive, and he's very strangely talking about the testimony that he gives rather than what the truth is. Let's hear some more from Robert Baker in court.
So somewhere within sight, you let Chris Austin out.
Yes.
Okay. And as you've said, you've already described the Porsche, right? You've shown him a photo of Fabio. And what do you tell him to do?
It goes without saying. I don't have to say anything.
So he just knew all on his own what to do when he got there?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you have a conversation with him about what he was supposed to do when the two of you got to the strip mall? Again, when did you have that conversation so the two of you would be on the same page?
When he got there to LA, we had started this discussion about how I was going to do this. And I just said I needed to wait for an opportunity to arise.
And what was the discussion the two of you had about the opportunity?
I had to wait for the opportunity, and I had to listen to find information. I didn't tell him that. I knew that. I told him, well, I'm waiting for information to come in, and that's it.
Waiting for information to come in?
Yeah, so to him, it sounded...
From Monica?
From whoever. I didn't tell him where.
Okay.
I said for information to come in. But
so what are you thinking when you hear that there? He starts off in the same pattern we've heard him with the other guy. So somewhere within sight, you let Chris Austin out, and he says yes. Very quick answer. Again, that's an indication of the truth. So I'd be like, yeah, I believe that. And then he's asked, and you can see him starting to really deviate now because the questions are getting slightly harder. Okay, and as you said, you've already described the Porsche, right? You've shown him a photo of Fabio, and what did you tell him to do? And the pause after that, before he starts talking, is 6 seconds long. So that question makes him think a lot about what it is that he wants to say. For some reason, the answers are not coming short and fast to this question. So what is the question? Really, the question is, what did you tell Chris to do? 6-second pause. And the first thing he says is, it goes without saying, I hadn't to say anything. It goes without saying as a convincer. He's trying to convince us. You're asking stupid questions here. You should know the answer to this question from everything that I've said previously. It goes without saying. Don't be silly. That is a convincer. Sometimes we hear people use words like, obviously, I couldn't ask him. Is it obvious, or are you trying to convince me that it is obvious? Are you trying to make me feel a bit stupid if I ask the question? It goes without saying is something similar to that. It's a convincer. He's had 6 seconds to think, and his answer is, I hadn't to say anything. I'm interested. I'm very interested in this case now. So he just knew all on his own what to do when he got there, and the answer comes from Robert, yeah. Now, that's slightly different from yes. Now, yes is a fine word to use. I'm not picking on anyone that uses yes. It's a very formal word when most of us in life will use yeah, yep, yeah, I, all those sorts of words. And he's using one of those ones here, the slightly slangier yeah. Slightly different from the yes. I don't know, I can't draw any conclusions from it right now, but maybe he's just relaxing a bit and using more sloppy language than the formal yes there. So he just knew all on his own what to do when he got here. Yeah. Okay, when did you have a conversation with him about what he was supposed to do when the two of you got to the strip mall? Again, when did you have that conversation so the two of you would be on the same page? And once more, he gives a longer answer, and it starts with the again, which is thinking time. He's not ready to answer these detailed questions. I think this happens a lot with deception, which is that we've thought about what the story is that we want to tell, the facts that we want to get across in deception. We haven't thought about all the detail. There always will be things that we will not have covered off when we invented a story or a lie in our heads. And therefore, when we are asked about it, we need some thinking time to think about, what's the proper answer to this? I haven't covered this, and that's what could be happening here. When he got there to LA, we had started this discussion about how I was going to do this. Now, that is interesting, the use of started this conversation, not had a conversation, which would be the conversation started, there was the middle of the conversation and the end of the conversation. But when he got to LA, the conversation started. That means there was more to the conversation. It went on beyond when he got to LA. If you are a trial watcher of this trial, I think that's quite important in this whole thing. I started discussing about how I was going to do this. Now, there's an interesting one because I've seen a lot of him talking about him doing it and saying Monica didn't do it. Very casually here, he says, I was going to do this. So he's taking all of it on himself. He doesn't stutter on the I or anything like that. So look, he's admitted to doing the murder, but there is ownership of doing it, how I was going to do this. And I just said, I need to wait for an opportunity to arise. We all heard it, didn't we? The word just, which makes me go, I just said I need to wait for an opportunity to arise. So I think there was a lot more conversation going on there. What he wants us again to do is just focus on that little thing that comes after the just. Pretend that nothing else was happening. This was all very simple. Just this was happening. I need to wait for an opportunity to arise. He's asked, and what was the discussion the two of you had about the opportunity? And Robert says, again, he's owning it, I had to wait for the opportunity and I had to listen to find information. Now, the allegation here is that Monica was giving him information about Fabio's movements and whereabouts in order for Robert to kill Fabio. And he's taken it all on himself. I had to wait for the opportunity. And then he says, I had to listen to find information. We have a mismatch there. If you listen, you hear information. If you search, you find information. Often, when people's words mismatch, it's because they're making them up. They don't have the realistic words to convey the experience that they had. He says, I had to listen to find information. Not I had to listen to hear information. Not I had to search to find information. That mismatch. I had to listen to find information. And then he says, I didn't tell him that, which is interesting because I think he realizes there, and that's one of the longest answers he's given so far. So he's talking about the guy Austin here. I didn't tell him that. I knew that. I said I was. I told him. I said I'm waiting for information to come in, and that's it. Very interesting answer here because he's getting very stuttery, and I think that's because his brain is working overtime trying to think of what are the right words I need to say here to get across what it is I want to get across, that Monica wasn't involved. It was all just me and Austin, and that's why he's getting stuttery because he pulls out of a thought. He says, I was, and he stops, and he restarts again and says, I told him, I said, I'm waiting for information to come in, and that's it. Another interesting thing here is he has not answered the question, because the question was, what was the discussion the two of you had? So that's a really simple question. What was the discussion the two of you had? So tell me about the discussion. And he says, I had to wait for the opportunity and I had to listen to find information. Now, he doesn't say that was the discussion, but seeing as it follows on from the question about discussion, we could take it that the discussion was, I told him I had to wait for the opportunity and I had to listen to find information. He doesn't quite take the ownership of that, though. He doesn't say, I told him, or we discussed that I had to wait for the opportunity. So is there a bit of disjointedness there that this is not really happening? But then after saying that, he says, I didn't tell him that. So he's actually now saying that was not the discussion we had. I told him I'm waiting for information to come. So that is almost the exact same thing. But the discussion was that I had said to him, I'm waiting for information to come in. And that's it, is how he finishes that answer. And that's it again. This, I think, is him shutting it down. And that's it. No more happened. Please do not ask any more questions. And that's it. When truthful people tell a story, they just talk about the events that happened. They don't need to say that was all that happened because, well, that's just them telling the story. When we add in extras like, and that's it, well, I think we've got something going on there, which is more happened. But he doesn't want to say that. He wants to give us the impression that that's all that happened. So he thinks by saying, and that's it, we'll shut it all down. Believe that's what's coming. He says, he's asked, wait for information to come in. And he says, yeah, so to him, it sound, and he pulls out of that thought. And he's interrupted from Monica, but he's getting stuttery again, and he's trying to tell us what it sounded like to someone else. That's always an interesting one because that is flagging up to me. Someone else is going to say something here, and I'm going to cover that off with saying what it sounded like to him. But he's interrupted, and he's asked from Monica, and he says from whoever. I didn't tell him where. Did you spot it? He's asked directly, was it Monica that gave you the information? Now, he's out of his pattern here. His pattern would be to say, no. That would be it. Just that one word. No. However, he goes from whoever. I didn't tell him where. So he doesn't deny here it was Monica. He just says from whoever, which is not saying it wasn't Monica, because in fact, Monica is part of whoever. So it could well be from Monica. And then he says, I didn't tell him where, which again, he's relating the where that this story came from Monica. So is that the biggest leakage we've heard yet? That he doesn't go, no, not from Monica. And he said, I didn't tell him where. So that suggests that he knows where it was coming from. And he didn't tell this guy, Austin, what was going on. So, couple of bits into all of this now. And I've got loads more questions because he's getting rattled. And he's getting rattled and he's getting stammery. And he's starting to leak deceptive language. And when's he doing that? It's all about when he's asked about Monica's involvement. When he's asked about his involvement, he's quite straightforward. It's I did this, very short answers. When he's asked about Monica's involvement and where this information was coming from, he's very stuttery. He hasn't covered all this off in his head, which is why he's not ready to answer sharply. Coming up, Robert gets very stressed when talking about how he knew where Fabio was to kill him, and we overhear Monica and Robert talking when they think no one is listening. Just like here, do you ever feel that you're not being told the full story? You're right, this is happening to you all the time. I'm here to give you the key to seeing deeper, because this is about hearing the world with new ears, and I'm on a mission to share this with as many people as possible, and you can help. So if you want to unlock the secret, subscribe, follow this channel, join the movement. Also dive into the archives, which is our treasure trove of cases waiting to be explored. And do you know someone who needs this? Someone who deserves to hear the truth? Then hit the like button, share this, recommend it, pass it on, because every single click you give, every single share, it fuels the fire, because it allows me to dig deeper, to analyze further, and to bring this life-changing skill to even more people. I regularly hear from grateful audience members who've navigated tricky life situations using the listening skills that they've learned on this channel. So your like, your share, your recommendation could help someone like that. It is a great gift to give. Let's do this together. You ready for some more from the trial of Monica Sementilli?
Does that remind you what all of these back and forth conversations would have been between you and Austin, you and Birdsong, and you and Monica during that time period when you're moving money around and Austin is withdrawing money for his plane ticket that he purchases on January 12th to come to LA?
If you're trying to say that everybody was conspiring, no, it's not true.
Okay. So how did you know during the time that you're having Austin come down when he's buying his ticket on January 12th, where Fabio Sementilli would be at the end of the month so that you could kill him?
I wouldn't know exactly. I wouldn't know. I can't remember why yet. I know he was in L.A. He was in L.A. That's all I do remember.
Well, this is weeks before.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's what we just looked at.
So a lot more stress on display from Robert there. Does that remind you of all those back and forth conversations that would have been between you and Austin and you and Birdsong and you and Monica during that time period when you're moving money around and Austin is withdrawing money for his plane ticket that he purchases on January 12th to come to LA? He doesn't say yes, it does remind me, or no, it doesn't remind me. What he does is stick out there. If you're trying to say that everybody was conspiring, no, that's not true. A lot of weakness there. If you're trying to do this, not just saying there was no conspiracy or that's not the conversations I was having with Austin, with Birdsong, with Monica. He doesn't do that at all. He just bases it on an if. If you're trying to say that everybody was conspiring, no, that's not true. Well, everybody is everybody. He hasn't named people in general there. So he's not being reliable with his words as things are starting to slip out from this guy now, the more stress that he gets under. He's asked, okay, so how did you know during the time that you are having Austin come down when he's buying his ticket on January the 12th where Fabio Sementilli would be at the end of the month so you could kill him? Now, I don't know about you, but I would imagine that killing someone is a big life event, especially a pre-planned one. And he says, I wouldn't know exactly. I wouldn't know. I can't remember why yet. I know that he was in LA. He was in LA. That's all I do remember. Let's unpack that so you can see the stress in it, all the stutters and the restarts as well. We've got an at the beginning. I wouldn't know exactly. Is him having some thinking time on this question that obviously is causing him stress. I wouldn't know exactly. That's not I wouldn't know. That's not I don't know. That's him saying, I think what he wants to say is, I knew he was in LA. Didn't know exactly where he was. Funny how you tracked him down to kill him. But hey, I wouldn't know exactly. Well, that's the same thing as I would know a bit, at least. I wouldn't know. I can't remember why. And then that almost sounds like a threat thrown across the court to Monica. You know that, I might remember at some point. You need to look after me here. Anyway, he says, I know he was in the... I'll be really interested to know what in the was. I think he was going to pinpoint something a lot more because the is quite definite and it's quite in the area. house. But I don't know what he was going to say. He was in the, but he stops and says he was in LA. He was in LA. And then he says, that's all I do remember. Now, to say that, you have to know that you don't remember something, that there's something that you're claiming you can't remember. Otherwise, you just say, that was all. Yeah, but that's all I do remember. Suggest to me again. He's holding stuff back here. He's not telling us the full story. He's then said, it's then put to him, this is weeks before. He says, okay. She says, right, that's what we just looked at. January 12th is approximately 2 weeks before January 23rd. And he says, and that's all he says. So from there, being asked about how he knew where Fabio was to kill Fabio, he's rattled. He's rattled. His language is leaking deception, it's leaking stress, and it's leaking the fact that he's having to think very hard about the answers that he gives there. So the more he's asked about how did he have the information about where Fabio was, the more I'm seeing stress, the more I'm seeing deception in his answers. For me, start to think he might be hiding something. Let's have a listen to some more from Robert on the stand.
January 12th is approximately 2 weeks before January 23rd.
Okay.
Weeks before.
All right.
How did you know where Fabio Sementilli would be 2 weeks out?
I had no idea.
Okay. You were going to need some inside information in order to figure that out, right?
If I was to actually do it like that, I would, but
you did, right?
the only way I could know that, it's not inside, it's just probably general information. Through
So
conversation.
from general information, you knew that Fabio Sementilli would be in town 2 weeks out.
Most likely, he was probably in town.
Well, you had to have known that before you went through this whole back and forth in order to get Austin to come out and buy his plane ticket.
I probably picked up on the information, probably.
Probably. And do you remember also telling Austin that you knew that Fabio Sementilli was going to be on a trip at the end of January, and so you had to get it done before he left? Do you remember that conversation with Austin?
No, I don't.
So if Austin said you told him about this trip coming up at the end of January that Fabio was going to be traveling on for business, he would have just been lucky in making a guess or a coincidence, or how would that have come about?
I have no idea.
So if his source of information wasn't you, where would he have gotten such information?
I have no idea.
So maybe you're saying just a lucky guess?
I'm not even going to say it's a guess. I don't know. I really don't know.
A lot more deceptive language coming out now. He's on the rocks. How did you know where Fabio Sementilli would be 2 weeks out, he is asked. And he says, I had no idea. I point this out quite a lot in episodes. We generally have an idea, especially about something personal like how you'd know where this guy would be 2 weeks out. He says, I had no idea. We generally have an idea of how things happened. I don't know is a much more reliable, truthful denial of knowing something. I had no idea is going extra. It's trying too hard to persuade us that you don't know. Look, it doesn't prove someone is lying when they say, I had no idea, but it's an indication that deception is happening because most of the time we have some idea. Okay, you were going to need some inside information in order to figure that out, right? He says, so he's getting the thinking time again. If I was to actually do it like that, I would, but So he's now giving part answers. I think he thought, I'm going to go in this court, I'm going to give this testimony that Monica was nothing to do with it. I did it all on my own, or I had this Austin guy as an accomplice. And now when he's being asked detail that he hasn't thought of, the stress is going up, the answers become much more woolly, and we see the indicators that he's having to think about what it is that he wants to say, like, it's put to him, but you did, right? And he says, the only way I could know that, it's not inside, it's just probably general information through conversation. Now, he doesn't answer the question there, which is, you did know where he was going to be. And he says, the only way I could know that, it's not inside, it's just probably general information through conversation. Why does he not answer that question? Why does he not say, yeah, I knew where he was going to be, or no, I didn't know where he was going to be? Instead, he just talks about this false thing, which is the only way I could know that. It's not inside, it's just probably general information through conversation. Just probably. Well, we've got the word just there again. So there's me going, I'm going to look at some deception in here. Probably general information. That's not, it was certainly from general information. And he gets that through conversation. Through conversation with who? I mean, just thinking about it, if you want to know where someone's going to be and they're married, then if you're finding out where they're going to be through conversation, could be from their wife. But he doesn't answer the question. He's now very evasive about how he knew where Fabio was. Instead of telling us how he found out, just being straight about it, he's going all sorts of ways to try and deflect away from talking about that. So it's put to him, from general information, you knew that Fabio Sementilli would be in town 2 weeks out. And he goes very, very vague in his answer. Most likely, he was probably in town. Is one of those quizzical words, most likely, so that's not definite. He was probably in town. Again, he just does not have, I think, realistic words because he's not giving us an authentic experience here. He's having to construct it as he goes, which is why we're getting words like likely and probably and thinking time and so on. Well, you had to have known that before you went through this whole back and forth in order to get Austin to come out and buy his plane ticket, is put to him. He says, I probably picked up on the information. Probably. That's not me emphasizing the probably. He says probably twice in his answer. I probably picked up on the information probably. So he's now talking about how he found out where Fabio was going to be in really vague terms. For some reason, he doesn't want to share with us how he found out where Fabio would be. Or tell us his complete, denial of the fact that he knew where Fabio would be and just say, I got lucky. None of that. He's not sharing with us how he knew where Fabio would be. The person asking the questions, the prosecutor, I think this might be, picks up on this and puts to him probably. He says probably. And then she says, and do you remember also telling Austin that you knew that Fabio Sementilli was going to be on a trip at the end of January, and so you had to get it done before he left? Remember that conversation with Austin? He says, no, I don't. It's put to him, so if Austin said that you told him about this trip coming up at the end of January that Fabio was going to be travelling on for business, he would have just been lucky in making a guess or a coincidence, or how would that have come about? Robert goes to, I have no idea again. And he interrupts the answer there because he knows what it is he wants to say, which is, I have no idea. And he gets there really, really quickly with that potentially deceptive concept of I have no idea. I mean, just thinking about what went down, he must have some idea about how all of this happened. But no, he's saying he had no idea. So it's put to him, if his source of information wasn't you, where would he have gotten such information? He replies, I have no idea. It's there again. So maybe you're saying it's just a lucky guess. He says, I'm not even going to say it's a guess. I don't know. Finally, he gives us an I don't know, which is much more reliable than I have no idea. It's truthful people don't mind saying, I don't know. They don't feel the need to know everything. It's people who are lying who feel the need to know every detail or pretend to know every detail because they think they'll get caught out if they don't know things. So I don't know, generally a truthful indicator. On the back of so many I have no ideas, I'm not going to let everything disappear just because we heard that I don't know. And then he makes it even worse because he says, I really don't know. This is an attempt to persuade us. It's an LY word. Really don't know. It's not just that I don't know. It's I really don't know. And that really is an interesting one as well. Is that him telling us he's honest? Because when people feel the need to tell us how honest they are, we go, what's going on there? Why do you feel the need to tell me how honest you are? Why do you need to put a flag on your honesty? Again, truthful people tend not to want to do that. They just tell us a story and they don't go honest or honestly this happened. So I really don't know. So some more there from our good friend Robert, and I'm seeing more and more and more deceptive indicators, especially when he's pushed on how he had all this information about Fabio. Let's get one more bit from him on the witness stand.
Well, he testified that you told him you had to get it done in January because Fabio was leaving the end of the month. And you're telling this jury you didn't tell him anything about that.
If I knew he was leaving at the end of the month somewhere, honestly, I would have postponed it.
You would have postponed it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said Monica always told you when Fabio was traveling, right?
Yeah.
Because that's when you guys would get together, right?
Yeah.
Showing you People's 261, showing a reservation for Fabio Sementilli leaving Saturday, January 28th from LA to Boston. See that?
Yeah. There's no way for him to know that.
For who?
Austin.
Right.
Yeah.
Except through you.
There was no reason for me to tell him this.
Well, you were getting him to come out.
Yeah, but
to kill Fabio.
I didn't even know that.
So obviously there was a reason, right?
I didn't even know that.
You didn't know it.
On the end of the month thing, I don't remember that. I would have postponed this thing.
Okay.
More of the same there, more of the same. A lot more stress is put to him. Well, he testified that you told him you had to get it done in January because Fabio was leaving at the end of the month, and you're telling the jury you didn't tell him anything about it. And the stutters come here in the answer from Robert. If I knew he was leaving at the end of the month somewhere, honestly, I would have postponed it. Now, he doesn't answer the question. Are you telling the jury you didn't tell him, which is the guy Austin, are you telling the jury you didn't tell Austin anything about Fabio going at the end of the month? And he doesn't say, yes, I'm telling the jury I didn't tell him anything about that. Or he says, if I knew he was leaving at the end of the month somewhere, honestly, I would have postponed it. Now, why does he not answer the question? It's a diversion. Lying is hard. We'd much rather tell stories than tell outright lies, especially if there's a thought that this may come up and bite me at some point, which is maybe what's going on here, so which is why he talks in this hypothetical. If I knew he was leaving at the end of the month somewhere, honestly, I would have postponed it. Now, the somewhere is interesting, but that doesn't need to be said. If I knew he was leaving at the end of the month, I would have postponed it. That would do, but he says somewhere, suggesting to me he has the concept of the where in his head for him to be able to say that potentially he knew where he was going. Maybe it was far away and he wouldn't be back, or it was somewhere he went to and stayed for a while. But the somewhere is interesting there. It makes me think that he did know where Fabio was going, and he uses honestly, which I discussed earlier. Honestly, I would have postponed it. Now, why is he suddenly feel the need to tell us that he's being honest? He's sworn. He's on a witness stand. He said he will tell the truth, but now he's flagging up that, honestly, this is what would happen. I don't believe that part of it, I'm afraid, because of his use of the word honestly. You would have postponed it. He says, yeah. Well, you said Monica always told you when Fabio was traveling, right? He says, yeah, again. So he's back in his pattern of what is really easy for them, which is just yes, no, except when stress comes. That's when you guys would get together, right? He says, yeah. He's then shown an exhibit for this reservation for Fabio from LA to Boston. And he's asked, do you see that? And he says, yeah. And then he volunteers, there's no way for him to know that, which is going extra. He's only asked if he can see the exhibit. And he says yeah to that. So he gives the answer, which is, it's right there in front of his face. Yeah, I can see that. But then he goes extra. So this is sensitive to him, and he wants to cut this off by getting an answer out to a question he hasn't been asked. There's no way for him to know that. He's gone extra. So again, I think potentially they did know that. For who? For Austin. Right. Except for you, which means that Robert, you would have told them this. And then he says, there was no reason for me to tell him this. Oh, that's a very interesting one. There was no reason for me to tell him this. That doesn't mean that he didn't tell him that. If you'll notice, he's not saying, I didn't tell him this. It's just, there was no reason for me to tell him this. And also to tell him this. Says that he knew what the this was. Because if he didn't know it, I didn't tell him that. I didn't know it would be the expected words. But instead, there was no reason for me to tell him this. Well, you were getting him to come out to kill Fabio, so obviously there was the reason, right? And he says, I didn't even know that. And I think he realises he's potentially slipped up in his previous answer. And I didn't even know that is him saying, no reason to tell him that because I didn't know that. I think he's going back to the question that he answered previously with the I didn't know that. You didn't know it, it's put to him. And he says, on the end of the month thing, I don't I don't remember that. I would have postponed this thing. So he's got a question to a question. On the end of the month thing, a question in response to a question gives the person answering some time to think about what it is that they want to say, to form their words. We've seen him do this a lot with and when he needs some thinking time to construct what it is that he's going to say next. And here he says, I don't. So I don't think the words are ready for him yet as well, because he's saying I don't, and he can't finish that off and say what it is that he doesn't. So he says, I don't remember that. I would have postponed this thing, which is a recurring theme from him, that he would have postponed this thing. And it's put to him, okay, at the end of that. So again, in that section, every single time he's really pushed on how did he know where Fabio was, how did he know about Fabio's movements, and the insinuation being that that comes from Monica. He doesn't just say, Monica did not tell me this. Monica did not give me this information. He is constructing strange answers and not answering the question. He's very sensitive about this, but he can't give a very straightforward denial. Okay. It's overhear time. We heard overhears talked about in court. It appears to be prison calls. Was Monica in prison talking to visiting Richard and talking? It was recorded. I'm not entirely sure where it comes from, but it's a fascinating listen. What I will say is, if you're watching this episode, there are on the video there are some subtitles or captions. They're not exactly representative of the words that were used, so don't be distracted by them.
I'll take the blame for everything. I know, but I'll take the blame. I'm rocking this. Right.
That's Dorgan. They have a camera at Payless shoes. They have no video of you.
Of us? Yeah, I'm doing it.
The video was only for a month or two.
And nothing on the other one at night too. There's nothing. Only thing is a couple of drops of my DNA, and you explained that already, that he took it. Yeah. Or something, or maybe he took it. I don't know. So just wait out, so the edges come in.
I'm so scared.
Wow. So put this through the best transcription software I could find, because some of it is quite loud in the background noise and quiet in the talking noise, but there is plenty to dig into there. We hear Monica say, they're saying I planned it. They're saying that I planned it. So my lawyer just said, then there's some noise, I'd never have my kids come home to that if I was planning it. She downplays the murder of her husband to it. We see that often with people who are accused of serious crimes or guilty of them. Instead of saying the bad words, the big thing out loud, they play it down with small words like it and that. Now, that's what we've got Monica doing there. She's downplaying the murder to just it. We have a strange bit of logic. I would never have my kids come home to that if I was planning it. Maybe just I didn't do it would be a better thing to come from your lawyer, or Monica did not do this. Instead, it's more this strange logic that, oh no, she would never do that. Well, yeah. Do we believe that or do we not believe that? Then Monica says to Richard, he said he thinks you're going to make a deal. I presume this is her lawyer. And he says, baby, he just effing with you. I notice he doesn't say he's not going to make a deal. There, he doesn't say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not what's going on. He just says he's just effing with you. And then he says, I'm taking it to my effing grave, baby. Which means the truth, which means the story of what happened. He is taking it to his effing grave, baby. Now, he doesn't say what that is, but, well, just there, what we have is he thinks you're going to make a deal. Now, that deal would be, I presume, saying that Monica was involved in it. And he says, I'm taking it to my effing grave, baby. Now, while he doesn't say, I'm taking your involvement there, it is linked to what was said before. And then she says, me too. So the pair of them have some secret together that they're not going to tell anyone. That is obvious from the words. He's taking it to his grave. She's going to do the same. They have some secret together that they are not going to tell the words. They don't say what it is, but we'll see some more words there. He says, I'm ready. I can't. I'll never. I'll take the blame. Interesting. And she says, thanks. She thanks him for taking the blame. Now, he doesn't say, I'll tell them the truth. I'll tell them that you did not do this. I'll tell them that this was all me. He doesn't say that at all. He says, I'll take the blame. Well, that phrase only comes up when there are more than one possible ways of the blame being apportioned. And that's when the bigger person sometimes stands up and says, I'll take the blame for this if it goes wrong. What he's doing here is saying, I'll take the blame, not you. I'll take the blame over anything or everything is what he says. And she thanks him for taking the blame. So he doesn't say, look, I'm going to tell them you were not involved. I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to make sure they know you were not involved. What he says is, I'll take the blame. And he says that again. I know, but I'll take the blame. Then there's some inaudible stuff. And then they talk about door cams. And we hear Monica say they have a camera at Payless Shoes and they have no video of you. And Richard asks a question back. Of us? Well, that's interesting. Were they together on the night? Remember I said earlier, I wondered if he was not only with Austin when this happened. But he seems to think that there is some video, and I don't know when this was recorded or the video was recorded or what it's about, but he seems to think there could be video of them together, which is incriminating there. She says none. But in that over here, I heard that word blame, and that was the thing that really got me thinking, yeah, there's way more to this than just no, Monica was not involved. So, let's have a look and conclude. What caused Robert stress? Well, being asked how he knew Fabio's whereabouts, Fabio's movements, that caused him real stress. No stress in saying, I killed him. None whatsoever. The stress was about Monica's involvement or lack of involvement, that as he was trying to say it. So that is what caused him stress. That's where we saw the stutters and the thinking about what it was he was going to say. And the planning of the whole thing, really talking about that, caused him stress. We saw many deceptive words come out from him. And again, those deceptive words, when did they come out? Well, that was when he was explaining and involving, again, Fabio's movements, how he knew Fabio's movements, and also in who was with him the night of the murder. And plus, in that over here that we heard, he spoke about taking the blame, not about clearing Monica's name. So the big question, I guess, is Monica involved in the murder of her husband? Well, looking at how Robert talks about it, my opinion would be, yeah, I think she was, based on what is there. Maybe something else will happen at the trial that will come out and maybe change my mind or make my view a bit more balanced. But Robert seems to be, in his words, hiding Monica's involvement. What are your thoughts? Do let me know on the comments in this channel if you can, or in the show notes you will find all the socials linked as well. neveratruerword.com is the website. There you can find a whole load more video episodes and podcasts delving into the words that people say and understanding what is going on inside their words, the truth, the deception and the motivations. neveratruerword.com, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.